Hi everyone. Welcome to Bright EU podcast once again. Apologies for not releasing an episode last week. We are just trying to take a break too, you know, just like any other person. Where you also have your own leave or weekend, say to also have like a week off too. Uh, but you can just close that gap probably by listening to the previous episode we had recorded, so that at least can have something you can listen to for the week. So thank you once again. I have my host, my co-host Isaac with me. Yeah. So how you?
Morning, everyone.
How, how has been your week? And how is your weekend going so far?
Yeah, I think my week has been a bit hectic. Uh,
Um,
Maybe my weekend will be less so. But
mm.
yeah, there's always something to do. Always
What
working.
was there anything new you learned this week? I mean, based on maybe work or something.
Maybe not particularly, but I mean, there's always something. There's always a learning curve with every job that comes your way. Always a better way to do things, like how we or more efficient way to get things done and get the results you're looking for. So, yes, yeah,
All
yes,
right.
that's
Yeah, yeah. All right, this will lead us to a topic that will be something that we'll be talking about today, which is something that Isaac is also very familiar with, and we try
well,
to,
we were
would,
both lawyers. We were both familiar with it.
yeah, yeah. We're both, we'll try and deconstruct some things, the myth and fact about this thing, because sometimes when you hear people's conversation about this particular topic, you will just know that people don't know about this thing, right?
Mhm.
So some things that we'll try and construct them and make it in a simple way as
Yeah.
possible. So have you ever wondered why some cases start in a small room, maybe Lugbe or somewhere in Ikorodu or somewhere in anywhere in Nigeria, and probably going up, going on appeal and ending up in a massive room in
Mhm.
at 3 zone. That's the Supreme Court. That's where the Supreme Court is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you wonder sometimes. People will ask you that, oh, the Supreme Court I want to go to straight, like landlord matter, landlord or tenancy matter. You're like, so we'll try and break down the ladder of justice, basically the hierarchy of the Nigerian courts,
Yeah.
the order it takes. There's no very important or less important courts. All of them have a role they play. All of them have their specialization or what they are expected to do. So there's nothing like, oh, Supreme Court is more important than any other court. Nope, nope. So these are some of the things I'll be talking about today. So let's start from here, right? The foundation.
Okay.
Can you just break down foundation or hierarchy of courts, like how it works in simple terms.
Okay. So, like this, like Corday has rightfully explained, that there is a ladder of justice, and there are different courts for different purposes, and on every level, there is a role that they play for different kind of matters. You can start in some of these courts. For several other kind of matters, you have to go to a different court. So how do we know which courts apply or some matters apply to? For example, so we have, let's start at the bottom, right? For the bottom, you know, day-to-day interactions, we have in southern states mostly, we have customary courts. We have the customary court. And in some states, Like Oyo State, they have grades. There's grade A customary court, grade B, grade C. Grade A is the highest of the customary courts. Grade B, grade C. So some of these lower grades, perhaps grade C, may not even necessarily be um, presided by a judge or a lawyer. Perhaps maybe someone who is very vast in customary matters, who is knowledge, maybe a valet or something, may be appointed as a small customary court judge. And sometimes for the grade A, it would be a, a judge. So from the customary court, we have the customary court at the lowest for southern states. For northern states, we have area courts. So we have area courts, northern states, states like Nasarawa, even the FCT. You have some other all these northern states, Sokoto and the rest. They have area courts. Those are like the smallest courts. So things like petty, even customary things that apply to them over there as well. Perhaps people who got married under, you know, custom, maybe didn't go to the church or didn't go to the registry, or as people who call it court marriage, didn't do court marriage, they just did, their traditional marriage alone, and they want to, let's say, dissolve it, they will go to the customary court. If they say it's a tenancy matter that the money isn't so much, you can go to the court. They have a limit. They have, if you're going to, it applies to, they can also sit over things like contracts, small contracts, maybe petty trader disputes or trade disputes, but the money can be so much depending on which state it is. They have a limit. So if you're going to bring a matter regarding, let's say, contract, the amount in which you are disputing cannot be more than a certain amount. You understand? So it can't be more than a certain amount. It has to be so amount. So if it's going to be lesser than that or within that amount, you can take it to the area court for adjudication or for settlement and the whole rest. So those are area courts. Those are some of the things that they deal with. Now, the next stage, on the next level, we have magistrate courts, right? And magistrate courts are not customary court. They are a little bit higher than customary courts. They deal with, maybe they don't deal with the customary matters at all. They will deal with things like contract as well, tenancy matters, criminal matters. Some customary courts also deal with criminal matters as well. But the offense has to be maybe simple to misdemeanors. Simple offenses to misdemeanors, that's offenses that don't carry a prison term of more than 3 years. So simple to misdemeanor offenses, they cannot. That's the only offenses they are limited to adjudicating upon. Sent to a magistrate courts, or the magistrate courts can hear certain felonies, but can be felonies more than, I think, 12 years, 10 years with prison sentence. So magistrate courts can hear tenancy matters, but even tenancy matters, contract matters, but cannot also have it is the price, the amount has a kind of bracket. They cannot go beyond the certain amount. The matter involves a larger sum of money, they wouldn't have the jurisdiction. So that's something. Jurisdiction is probably a word you've heard before. If you have a jurisdiction, is the should I say, the power and the authority of a court to sit over a matter and decide upon it. That is what jurisdiction is. So sometimes a court may act outside of its jurisdiction, that's acting outside of its powers allowed by it under the law to hear a matter. And once it does that, any order it gives as regards that matter will be null and void. If it is not within its jurisdiction to hear the matter, it will be null and void. So that's that about magistrate courts. They have to, it's limited. You cannot hear everything. You cannot decide on everything. So that is that about them. So the next court in the hierarchy, higher up, will be the state high court. State high court. Now, state high courts, I'm sure you've probably heard state high court and federal high court. And people get these two mixed up, and some people think it's the same. They are not the same, they are different, but they are of the same concurrent jurisdiction. So they are of the same level in terms of the hierarchy. So we have customary court, we have magistrate courts, we have the high courts. So the high courts are split into two, the federal and state. Now, what's the difference? The state high courts deal with matters and issues within the state. Let me just put it simply like that. Matters and issues within the state that stems from the state. Federal high courts deal with matters that involve federal laws. Let me put it that way. State laws, federal laws. Now, state high courts can do things like dissolution of marriage. If you got married at the registry or the court wedding or church wedding, you can go and dissolve it at the state. Oh, yeah. If you want to dissolve a Muslim wedding as well, it will be at the customary court or the Sharia court for this thing. For northern states, to dissolve a Muslim wedding, you would have to go to the Sharia court or the area court, Sharia courts. I will still get to the because they have their own hierarchy as well. So maybe in a bit generic here, so as to avoid confusion. So there's the state high court, the federal high court. So the state high court deals with things like dissolution of marriage. You want to dissolve your marriage, you want to divorce within the state, you can. And with the law is that you can go to any state within and any high court of any state in Nigeria to get divorced. It doesn't have to be the state in which you got married in. So they do things like the dissolution of marriage, things like contracts. I don't think they don't have a monetary limitation to how much of money involving the contract they can deal with. So they have an unlimited jurisdiction in regards to monetary things in contract. So contract, if it is tenancy of an amount that is like above 15 million or 10 million, depending on which state, they can hear it and above. So million, billions, they are there. Anything involving the laws within that state, they have the jurisdiction to hear it. I think that's how simple I can put it. Now, federal high courts have jurisdiction for things that involve the laws of the federation. Now, for those who don't know, most people like to think that the only law that exists in Nigeria is the Constitution. It's not. The Constitution is just the how do I say it? The grand norm that every other law derives its validation, or every other law derives its authority from. So the Constitution is like a skeletal framework. Every other law has to follow that skeletal framework. So we have the Constitution. Think of it this way. Constitution gives birth to the rest of the other laws. Constitution is the source. The rest of the other laws are right like that. So we have each state has their own different laws, and the federal government also has its own different laws. There are state laws, there are federal laws. So things like banking matters between bankers and banking policy, things that fall within jurisdiction of CBN, things that are within jurisdiction, things that NAFDAC deals with, drugs and food, like weapons, like ammunition, like currency, like aviation, like maritime ships and the rest. Everything falls under government overview, federal government overview. So they make laws regarding this thing. So whenever it involves the determination of matters that stem from some of these things, the federal high courts would hear them. So things like fundamental rights as well, the state and the federal high court have the jurisdiction to hear federal and fundamental rights enforcement matters. You cannot take your marriage divorce to federal high court. They do not have jurisdiction to hear it. So they have certain subject matters that they can hear, that they have the jurisdiction to determine. So you cannot just take any of your marriage, things like land matters, except it maybe involves the federal government. even at that, it has to really, really be within the purview of maybe between two um maybe two governmental organizations, federal government organizations are against each other and they're trying to sort it out. And again, yes, and depending on the law, if you want to sue maybe a federal government agency, some laws that created those agencies will say that any suit you want to bring against this particular government agency has to go to the federal high court. If you take it to the state high court, it does not have jurisdiction and you just have wasted your time. So depending on also which who you are suing, you have to go to the federal high court. If you want to do matters regarding company matters like corporate matters, and you want to enforce certain rights of a shareholder, you want to wind up a company, you want to dissolve a company, you want to enforce certain things within a company, you want to put a company in receivership, things like that, federal high court. State high court has no jurisdiction to hear corporate matters, federal high court. If you want to maybe sue a bank, maybe sue the CBN or sue a bank for banking policy matters and the determination of that, federal high court. Take it to state, you don't have jurisdiction, it's a federal matter, take it to federal high court. So I hope we're getting the gist of that. So state and federal high courts have the same level of concurrent jurisdiction. They are on the same level, but they have different subject matters in which they handle. Now, let's pedal back a bit. For customary court matters now, or area court matters, some of these matters, okay, maybe before we get to that, maybe we should go higher a bit. So if you want to appeal, maybe you are not satisfied with the judgment the high court gave you, you want to appeal, or maybe a federal high court or a state high court, you're not satisfied with the judgment and you want to appeal, you have a right of appeal to the court of appeal. You appeal to the court of appeal. If you are not satisfied, then you can go to Supreme Court. Very few instances does the court of appeal have the original jurisdiction for a first instance. As far you cannot just jump to the court of appeal straight. Yeah, that's why I want them to hear my matter. Only very few instances as regard maybe presidential election tribunal is the court of appeal direct to not start at the high court, to start at the court of appeal. Or if it's a matter maybe regarding the maybe a state and another state, it goes to the Supreme Court directly. So some of these things, those courts have original jurisdiction of a starting point, but mostly they are appeal courts. You appeal matters that have been determined at the high courts, take them to Supreme Court, to the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court. But then they created there's also before I forget, there's also the National Industrial Court, which is also a high court, which is also of the same jurisdiction with state, federal, National Industrial Court. They are on the same level. National Industrial Court deals with industrial employment matters alone, simplicity. That is it. Employment matters, industrial matters, things that involve workplace, employee compensation, anything involving that in the industry in itself, employment matters and the rest, the National Industrial Court, period, is a specialized court. Now, let's pedal back to the customary court. If you remember, customary court, the area court. So now, for some, like I said, the customary court has grade A, grade B, grade C. For the northern states, some of them have area courts and upper area courts. And they just kind of did a grading this thing for administrative purposes. So now, if you want to appeal, let's say a customary matter that you didn't get satisfied with at the customary court, maybe a matter that you did at the customary court that you were not so satisfied with, maybe it's regarding, maybe dispute in land, or it's in the rural area and everything, and you went to the customary court for that, and you want to appeal. You will not appeal to the magistrate court. You will not appeal to the high court. You would appeal to the customary court of appeal. So they created that specially for customary matters. That customary court of appeal now has that is now still on the same level with the high courts, the high court, the federal high court, the national industrial court. Are we getting it? Those it's now with customary court of appeal directly to court of appeal. Maybe if there was a chat, so easier to get by. If you are following, so there is so for the northern states, especially when for Islamic matters that start at the area court or upper area court, when it is time to appeal them, they will not appeal them to the high court of those states. They will appeal them to the Sharia court of appeal. Sharia court of appeal from area court. So Sharia court of appeal will be here, but also has that same this thing with those high courts, customary court of appeal, federal high court, national. They have that same level. They're like mates, right? So when it is now time to want to appeal from even the Sharia court or the customary court of appeal, it will go to the court of appeal. The court of appeal. Everyone will go to the court of appeal. So those four are on the same level. For appeals from magistrate court, you're not satisfied with the ruling in magistrate court, or judgment in magistrate court gives, you can appeal to the high court, the state high court, not the federal high court, the state high court. And I think the federal high court also can act as a court of an appeal when, let's say, you maybe so as there are specialized tribunals. So to say, specialized tribunals, you're not satisfied with the specialized with maybe the tax tribunal or perhaps the investment and securities tribunal. You can apply an appeal to the federal high court. You can appeal to the federal high court. So they also act as appellate courts for certain matters. So I think that's the most rounded and detailed explanation I can give as regards to their jurisdiction and abilities.
Yeah, I guess you've covered most of even the questions I want to even ask you. Uh, I guess it could have been great if you have like a description here. We'll try and maybe incorporate that in the graphic that we roll out for this episode. So what one thing we would one myth that or general belief or although it's meant to be like a topic on its own, but since you're talking about hierarchy of courts, I think it makes a lot of sense. It's about uh, the use of jury in our own system, right? That just like in how a lot of Hollywood movies are, or their system in the United States, it's more like a jury system where you will need to argue your case, and the jury takes uh, the decision or referendum on it. So that's not the case in Nigeria. So that's the purpose of this podcast and the this particular podcast we record every week is to try and deconstruct few things, to try and clarify things, to make it in a very simple way. You made reference to something when you're speaking, and I guess a lot of people might not understand what that means. Uh, Fundamental right enforcement. In simple terms, it's just basically you that your fundamental human rights, right? How you can make claim to it. uh Let me put it that way, because I don't want to go too technical. That's just basically it. Your fundamental rights. You approach the court. They give you. I mean, it's just an avenue for you to like enforce your fundamental rights. And you also talked about other specialized courts, national industrial courts. It talks about employment matters. There are other ones too. There is investment and securities tribunal for investment matters. There are quite a couple. People still also advocate for more courts, like courts that deal with intellectual property. We don't have that yet, but federal courts, works on that. Yeah. So these are just something about hierarchy of court. It's quite interesting. Even for a lawyer, it can also be technical on some things because at times if you don't institute your case in the proper court before they even hear the merit. Your case can even be struck out or dismissed. I mean, they are dismissal and being struck out. They are two different things entirely. But that is also a technical thing too. So that's just something about hierarchy of courts in a simple way. So nothing like, oh, I want to go to Supreme Court straight because I have the money. Nothing like that. So yeah, I think we would bring this episode to a close. Do you have any last word? Sorry, it will not be your last word. It will not be your last word in Jesus' name. Do you have
Man,
any parting word?
no, I do not.
Yeah, so guys, here you have it. Have week, a great week, and a more exciting weekend ahead. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you guys.